Okay, good morning or good local time if you're not in Pacific time. Today is Monday, March 20th, and this is the Kubernetes governance meeting, the first of, I suspect, a few, where we will try to nail down a good solid governance structure. This meeting is going to be recorded and will be made public, so behave. Now off to Jason and Brendan.
Cool. So thanks everybody for joining, and it's an ad hoc meeting, so thanks for making the time. Jason put together a really good agenda, I think, that captures, I think, what we're trying to achieve here. I'd ask everybody to take a look at that real quickly. It's not very deep. Basically, the first part is, we are, I think, universally here because we care a lot about this project and we want to see it be successful. So let's make sure we keep that in mind as we have all of these discussions. I know sometimes it gets a little contentious, and let's make sure we keep everybody's viewpoint in mind and make sure we're respectful and all that sort of stuff. I wanted to start by giving a quick overview of the community survey data because I think everybody's seen it, but at the same time, I think it's worth revisiting because I think that that's sort of my motivation for trying to drive this. So I'm going to share my screen here really quick. And so basically I wanted to start with this. Are we screen sharing successfully right now?
Yes.
All right. So I wanted to start with this graph, which was I'm able to successfully manage applications using Kubernetes. I think this is a very clear indicator that we are quite successfully producing an extremely useful product. I think we should all be very proud of what we've achieved here. But when you scroll back up to one of the other questions, skipping over developer tools, which is its own kettle of fish, these two questions I think are why we're here. The first is, full on 50% of our community doesn't understand how project decisions are made. They're either neutral, 25% are neutral, and another 25% are slightly more than 25% actually disagree that they understand how decisions are made. And then slightly smaller percentage, slightly more skewed towards the positive, but still a significant percentage of people don't understand how they should participate in the community. And I think that's a really big problem. And I think that this one in particular around understanding how project decisions are made is something that I think I would like to focus on as the goal to solve here. And so that's the first sort of order of business, which is, I put two candidates in here at the beginning. In the agenda, these two, as the hopeful outcomes of this meeting, right? Which is, one is an agreement to define a classification system for decisions. Effectively, like, is this a SIG decision? Is this a project decision? Is this a PM decision? Like, is this how do we define? I think there's been a lot of work on defining roles and a lot less work on defining actual useful thing, which is actually how do we decide things. And so I would like to put forth a proposal that the two items that we want to get out of this meeting are the agreement to define a classification system for decisions and an agreement to define processes for how those decisions are made. And with that, I'm going to shut up and let everybody else talk.
I would propose we have a meta issue that's one step higher than that, which is defining who gets to define this process. And if you go back to the survey issue, and I think the concern of a lot of people that I talked to, the basic issue of how does the project governance even get decided? Who are really the deciders is a first order issue, and then what those decisions become are a second order issue.
Can I make a point for the sake of the recording? Can people introduce themselves when they start speaking, at least for the
Sure. Yes, you bet. Bob Wise, Samsung.
I guess we should do that. My hope was that by time bounding it, we would force this to happen in the sense that, I wanted a very explicit statement from this group that we want to merge something in 1 to 2 weeks. And I think part of the challenge has been that historically these things linger and go on and on and on. And because they linger and go on and on and on, there's lots of backroom conversations and backroom deal making and things like that. And that leads to that misunderstanding. I'm hopeful that if we time bound it, that we will actually allow everyone to participate and yet have a really clear process. But I'm open to saying these are the 5 people who are, owners or whatever we want to decide are the people who are going to do these first 2 items.
Well, I mean, it goes back to an essential project issue, which is who is it that has to agree to, pick the point you just made, a two week bound around anything. whatever that happens to be. Who has to actually agree? I mean, is having some consensus of some people who've managed to be free on a Monday morning good enough? Is it our three Kubernetes founders? Is it Brian? I mean, who is it that actually needs to kind of put their stamp and say, yeah, this is how we're going to operate?
Well, it seems to me that the two choices are either everyone who's involved here and has made the time and prioritized, and I think none of us, at least I certainly wasn't randomly free, right? I made myself free because this is important. Or we go with owners because that's the only other established hierarchy that's there that I think fits. So I don't know, let's let other.
So I would say owners plus, at least for right now, owners plus a representative community, anyone who is outside of the owners list who feels that they have a significant role to add, that we find a way to have that community representation, because as Brendan says, that's all we have today. We've gone 3 years with that and we need to change it, but I think we need to take a step forward. So if it's a single community representative, if it's a set of community representatives, I don't know that that's necessarily a challenge for us right now, but I'd be willing to have a flexible group of people who are not in the owners file identified and able to participate.
I agree with that. Go ahead.
So one way to approach this might be to actually separate out roles around, owners, approvers, reviewers, and participants, right? I think there are people in the community that we definitely want to hear feedback to, we want to take seriously, but at the end of the day, we can't have, the larger we make this, the more opt-in we make this, the more likely we are to have somebody sort of lay down the tracks and veto things. And so we need to have a way to actually sort of see past that. And I'm not sure what that process is or how we decide to cut that stuff. I think the owner aspect is Brendan trying to drive this to be time bounded, right? That's like making sure that things don't, like we have to decide who the deciders are. And then I think it's a self-selecting group in terms of reviewers. And then we have to communicate back to the community in an effective way to make sure that everybody's aware. So that maybe that's a model that'll work here.
Yeah, I would prefer to sort of start with like let's just force people to lie down on the tracks if they're going to lie down on the tracks, right? And I'd say like, let's just time bound it, say 2 weeks. We're going to merge in 2 weeks. That's the first thing people need to lie down on. And then the second thing is, here's the people who are going to decide in those 2 weeks, and here's the process. And somebody wants to lie down.
I would rather that we decide up front before things get heated versus waiting until a particular person has a particular issue, because then it's very easy to make that personal.
I agree. No, I mean, that's why I wanted to say like 2 weeks. That's
the 2 weeks in the who, right?
The who has to be decided with the 2 weeks so that we know who the decision goes to when at 2 weeks we have contention.
All right. All right.
Let's talk about this. Let me just throw something out there, and let's just start from this perspective. Let's say the approver is the owners, right? At the end of the day, we would want to have either a majority or supermajority of the approvers approve whatever this governance structure is. I don't think there's any other practical way to knock this out. So whatever we come up with in this time frame, I think the final sign-off is the list of top-level owners in that list. Is that something that we can achieve consensus with as a group?
I saw Chen with her hand up.
Yes. So Chen from Google. I have two questions. First of all, Brennan, I completely agree with you about time bounding it. And if this is important, then people should make the time for it. And if we want, maybe even do a face-to-face, whatever, just to close on that. Have we made a decision which decisions we are trying to make? Because it's very generic right now. Define the classification system for decision and the process for decision. But when we had the elders discussion, one of the outcomes of that came that we have different decisions to make, and then we have different people. So what is the scope right now?
I think right now, consider this our constitutional Congress.
Yeah.
Right? So you need a bunch of deciders that can decide the framework for long-term governance.
And I think that the classification system that I'm looking for basically is like SIG level decision, project level decision. I don't know if there are any other categories. That seems like that covers it in my mind.
I would agree with you on some of that stuff, but I don't want to get into the details now, Brendan.
And the classification system includes how to classify things, right?
That's correct, right? Yes, this is what defines a SIG level decision. This is what defines a project level.
Okay.
Do we need to differentiate product versus project, technical versus non-technical?
I think we do need to distinguish technical versus non-technical.
Definitely.
I mean, I kind of felt like SIG PM sort of is the product level decisions, and then if it's bigger than that, then it is a project level decision, and it's the same as a technical decision.
So I
Speaking
have a lot of open questions around how we decide membership in SIG PM. We have a good idea in terms of with SIGs and coding and maintainers and all that. When it comes to people taking a leadership role in other parts of the project, we don't have a good metric for who actually is in and out and how they actually prove themselves to be committed to the project.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna back off a little bit because I want to recycle back to the decision making process. Craig said owners. I'm okay with owners. Can we agree to that as a first level cut?
Unless we can at least agree to a framework to drive consensus. You know, we're not going to have any outcome that's at all. Like, so at the end of the day, we need to at least define who that approver is. And right now, owners is the best thing we have. I mean, it's worked for us pretty well in almost every way. I think it's a good set of people that understand the project and really kind of get in their bones. Is that consensus shared, or do we need to have this discussion?
I'm fine with that. No disagreement.
Okay.
Is there anybody who is in disagreement, who has a position against the owners being the approving set for this particular set of discussions?
Specifically, anybody who's not in owners who wants to dissent.
Yes,
Well, I'm not in owners, and I agree.
So let me pull up the file on my phone here, and we can actually make sure that we have a concrete list of names that we know who we're talking about.
That would be great.
So I would suggest that we talked a little bit more like a community or a business side representative in addition to the owners who are more strictly technical. And I would recommend that we say owners plus 1 to 2 people like that. And Brandon Phillips comes to mind immediately as someone who has been very good at helping us define and establish processes, wrangle people, and make good decisions across the community and technology. So that makes it a slightly broader group. We can say no.
Okay, here's the thing: is that I would say, you know, we should have the owners actually approve adding a couple of folks like that, right? So that at least we're grounded. And I don't object to that, but I just think that like having some.
Need to be really principled about this. I think saying the owners, like, just, you know, random grab bag, like, you know, I would say Bob Wise meets the same bar, right? There's a bunch of people in the community that meet the same bar, so it becomes arbitrary if we start throwing that open. So what I would suggest is that there's going to be a lot of other places where people can add value, and I think it's good to have people under the you know, like the approvers is just the final step, and like it's largely going to be, all the work's going to be done by the people. But you know, like if they need other people, if they want other things, like maybe we can say that the approvers can invite other people. I think Brendan would be a great person to do. I just don't think that it should be arbitrary. I think it should be.
Like in the end, the approvers are going to be the ratification committee, and we can take the advice of people like Brandon or Bob or anybody else who feels like they want to participate as we see fit when we publish our proposal to the wider world.
Yeah.
All right, so just to be clear, I'm going to read off the list here just for those folks that don't have it in front of them. In the approvers section of the top level owners file, there's Brian, Brennan Burns, Don Chen, me, Joe Bita from Heptio, because I didn't introduce myself earlier, Daniel, Lavalamp, Clayton, Tim, and Wojtek. Okay, now it's heavily slanted towards Googlers, but that's just, you know, that's the world we're in. So it's not a perfect list, but it is what it is.
I think that I fully acknowledge the cleanness of just sticking with that list to begin with. I think that and there are no doubt advantages for a project like this to have more of a perhaps a tighter consensus from a smaller group of people who know each other and work with each other. But I feel like it's the representation, the diversity on that group is really just not high enough.
So let me say this. I feel like the goal would be to ensure that everybody who is a member of the community who participates in these things today is recognized in some official structure that we can do this. I think I share the concern, which is I don't think, I mean, maybe this is just something we can ask. Is there anybody on this call who's not in that list who has no intention of bringing people like Bob and Brandon and others in the community into the decision-making process to set this up? I mean, Bob, like I would agree. Let's start from the perspective that everyone that I know of in this list is committed to doing this.
Well, I'll put it a different way. I think everybody on that list has a personal, not a commercial or company, but they have a personal stake in making the project successful. I think it transcends the company affiliation.
Right.
Can you just do a quick count, Joe, of the number? Just because I couldn't do it in my head.
Okay, sorry. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8.
There's 8. So I guess the first point would be it really needs to be an odd number. And the second would be, are there 5 people on that list that are presently Google employees?
So let's see. So Brian, Don, Daniel, Tim, and Wojtek. Brian, Don, Daniel.
Wojtek. So technically, Wojtek is only on there so that he can expedite approvals at the top level across the core. I did not consider him part of the list for the perspective of it.
Yeah, and I think that would be fair. I think it'd be fine to drop to. I mean, if we drop to 7.
When we added Wojtek to this, we put that on there. I do think it's fair that this should, to Bob's point, that there should probably be 3 Googlers on that list, or not a majority of Googlers on that list.
Is Don or Daniel here?
Well,
No, they're not interested in this topic, so I could potentially drop.
So if we drop Don, Daniel, and Wojtek,
that makes sense. And we drop to 5. That makes sense.
That's a good starting point. We can broaden that out over time.
And I do think that it's worth.
This is not a cabal, right? I mean,
this is just the approval step of it, right? This is just the folks that will, at the end of the day, ideally, this just becomes a review and rubber stamp what the committee's come up with, right?
So if this comes down to a 3-2 vote, then we've kind of I don't want to be in that situation.
The context of this meeting is going to be completely different than when the notes of this are published and people are discussing what the outcome was. And all of the people on that list, including the people we're talking about removing, I have the greatest respect for. It's really clear they have the project's good interest at heart. But it looks like Google is the only one with the majority.
That's fine. Look,
Can I make a statement here, as someone who's not part of Google?
And actually, Google would end up not with a majority. If we drop those 2, then it's Brian and Tim, myself, Joe, and Clayton, right? Yeah. And I'd be okay saying, actually, and the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to vote in 2 community members, and we will time bound that so that they get voted in by Wednesday. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So hold on. From a procedural point of view, we've just reinvented elders.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's because it was a good idea when we started it, and then it got killed.
But it was a good idea.
But from a ratification point of view, I don't think anybody from Google objects to Google not having a supermajority, right? Nobody's casting aspersions on anybody here's intentions, so we don't need to waste time, caging everything in terms of apologies. So, for the sake of progress, I think this is effectively decided. Yes, unless somebody else wants to say something.
John, only concern that was with the elders with regards within the community is that it wasn't clear what decisions would be made by the elders and whether that's the right team for all the decisions, right? Because the elders right now are the founders. I can, for example, say that about project management and prioritization, there are other things. So if, for example, the elders will do the classification, right, of problems or decisions, and then it will be delegated to the right people, I think that's great. But having to decide everything,
sure.
No, that's the goal. The goal is to have the small group of people figure out what the classification system is, and then basically, if it's a SIG level decision, the SIG does it. And I think it's even okay if different SIGs have different practices because we decentralize the SIG. Right?
Just to be clear, the list that we talked about here is not elders. Again, constitutional Congress, right? This is just
one decision
list that we can use to help bootstrap the governance.
It's literally just bootstrapping. We just need something that the community can agree to approve the bootstrapping process. And like it or not, that group of people has historically made all the decisions for this project. That them embracing this should be the first decision to kind of bootstrap the rest of it. I'd also like to point out that this group of people are the approvers. They don't necessarily have to be the people that come up with the process. They're most welcome to. But we should make sure that we do have a representational group of people actually involved in owning the proposal. right? So I think let's just break it into pieces. We've established the approvers. That's great. They will sign off on this at the end. When we hit when the clock goes and we have to get this in, they'll bless it. The next thing is we need an owner, ideally one person, who's going to be the organizer. Now they're not in the work product. There'll be a bunch of participants that work with them. But ideally we'd have one, maybe two people who are going to put the majority of their time the next 2 weeks into pulling this wrangled up. Do we, first of all, do we agree that we need an owner? And second of all, who would that person be?
So Brian has been working on this PR Community 286, I think, which I think is trying to capture sort of all of the decisions in toto and has garnered 1 million comments. And Brian has pleaded for somebody else to help. So I offered this morning to him to help to take over that PR and try to wrangle the rest of the community feedback if nobody objects.
That would be wonderful. I think having Tim as the owner of this process would be awesome. Are there any objections to that?
Yeah.
Can we be clear about when you say the process is, what is the process?
The owner gets to define the process. So the owner basically would come up with the mechanism whereby, we haven't figured out scope yet, so let me just lay out the governance framework. Owner, approvers, we've got that. The next two are reviewers and participants, right? Reviewers would be everyone in the community. We'd ideally want to create a open window for whatever work product the owner and the participants come up with for the reviewers to review and actually provide feedback. They work through a few iteration cycles. If they can't achieve consensus, they go to the approvers, and the approvers escalate and resolve those issues. Right now, I think the first point of order would be to identify an owner who's going to establish a proposal around the scope of this effort, a working model, working meetings, etc., and then participants who are committed to working with that owner as a significant portion of their time over the next 2 weeks to resolve this.
I think the expectation is as well that the approvers would all be willing to give almost all of that attention that they can over the next 2 weeks to hit Brendan's goals too, right?
That's it. It's probably better not to wait till the end to have them weigh in. And
now, to be clear, there's KubeCon coming up, which is a whole wrench in this works. So that kind of sucks timing-wise. But what are you gonna do?
And a release. Who needs one of those?
Well, I'm happy to say we start the 2 weeks. I'm happy to say we start the 2 weeks on April 10th or whatever. That allows people to make time in their schedules anyway. And I think the important bit is time bounding, not.
Two things are going to be important. I think starting it when we're not contested with KubeCon and the other things is important. The second piece is it's probably going to be beneficial to have some amount of time together for the working group to actually be able to meet face to face and crush issues as a group. So whoever the owner is, which is we've established as Tim, I think it'd be nice to be able to bring other participants together with Tim, over those 2 weeks to kind of work through issues, subdivide the efforts, do the documentation, get early feedback from the reviewers, from the participants and reviewers, etc. Please go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, as we talk about this, I would really like to encourage us to split this into two, and I don't know if this means two owners or whatever, but I think the split that we outlined at the beginning of the classifications for decisions and then the process for decisions, they're two totally parallelizable separate subjects, and I think we'll have more effect if we try not to combine them together and we plan them separately.
So I do think that we need to essentially have a statement in terms of how do we actually split decision making between SIGs and a larger part of the community. I mean, if I can zoom in on this just very quickly, when I first proposed SIGs, I thought it was just a way to sort of have some conversations before things were presented to the larger group. I never, and again, things morph and this isn't sort of canon, but I never intended this stuff to actually be localized decision making, but more of localized working groups.
That was my intention too. I thought SIGs were going to be mailing lists.
Yeah.
Well, but it makes sense, right? I mean, as we've gotten big, it's a necessary byproduct of getting big is that you have to make those distributed decisions. I think the challenge is we never had the process to bring them back because you never thought that they were going to make decisions, so we never had a process to bring them back.
Well, I think
this is all your fault, Joe.
What's that?
This is all your fault.
It is. I took a year off.
But the broader issue, I think, is, what we'd ideally want to do is have the owner come up with an early deliverable, which is just what the set of work streams are. And you pull in whoever. Go ahead, Ken. I'm going to shut up.
Yes. No. Are you? Can I go?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, I actually think, the SIGs are amazing. So maybe if it happened by mistake, this is great. I think where Brian started with his PR was to actually capture how it is working today. And I also want to make sure that we are not trying to define everything from scratch, just some things that are working well. So if we can, the first thing that we should deliver is how things are working today, how we are making decisions, where it's working, and then identify where it's not working. And
I would really like to not capture what we're doing today. Right, it's a total waste of time. Right, like the SIGs are working fine, and that's great. Right, so the extent of capturing what we work today is, I see Clayton frowning at me, but I'm going to keep going, and then I'll let him talk. What it is like below SIG, great, you can do your thing, whatever, that's fine. But we have effectively no process for saying no, that thing can't be decided in the SIG. It needs to come back to the project level decision. So to the extent of capturing it today, we should say like, hey, you know what? Whatever's going on in the SIG stays in the SIG, and that's great, but we need to have this decision point when we bring things back up. And when we bring things back up, we don't have a process. We don't have something we can capture today, right?
I think the only reason I was going to disagree or kind of agree while disagreeing was, I think that capturing the current state is really important for people who are outside the community orienting themselves to how the community works. And in that aspect, I think having a document that says, hey, here's our expectations, like the contributor expectation stuff, kind of just brought, like, if say that the process owner also owns defining like that high level process, we slim those sections down. But I do think that it's important to convey that.
And the reason I think it's important, because there are also some learning. Brendan, I hear you say that there was no process, but actually there was some process, also how SIGs are supposed to report back and how they should increase the transparency into what's going on. And it didn't work. Right, so we can go and start from scratch, but we can also do a retrospective and understand where it did not work and what did we try to communicate and how we did that. Because there's been a lot of learning over at least the past year that I've been on the community. And from my perspective, that throwing all of that and starting from scratch seems...
No, the part of the proposal is not to destroy all of that. In fact, I think that the point is that I think each SIG will have their own process, and if we say to each SIG owner or to each SIG group, like, you need to define your process, that's great, and that's a good outcome. So I think that the part that we want to destroy is the part that never existed anyway, which is, well, how do we figure out that things are higher level decisions?
Yeah, so I agree with the latter part of your statement. I think the first part of your statement, Brendan, can be debated, whether SIGs should have a conforming procedure, like for making decisions, or whether we should let them do their own free thing. We can decide that. We don't need to inline it right here. I think the second part of, who gets to make what decisions is a reasonable thing to try to capture. Now, I've been taking notes on all the things people are expecting the owner to do, and it's a lot more than I thought I was signing up for. I'm looking to
delegate, Tim. It's fine. Like, that's why you have participants, right? So
yes,
I'm happy to sign up as a participant, and I will help any way I can.
If somebody wants to codify what we're doing today, I could offload that right away. Joe's had his hand up for 14 seconds.
So on the writing down where we are versus where we want to go, I just want to be a little bit careful that right now, where we are right now is ad hoc, understood, it's people and relationship based versus being rule based. I think it would be helpful for the community to get some of the stuff written down, but I think once you write it down and you check it in, it carries a lot more weight than the ad hoc process that we have now. And so I think the act of writing it down makes it more official than it necessarily is, and I think that that's something that we should be very aware of.
So if we went through that document and every single person who has an objection to a particular line, we just strike that out and we leave everything that's there and check that in. I think that accomplishes what I was mostly trying to get at, which was, like, I don't think it's very hard for 3 or 4 of us to sit down and go through every line and say, we don't agree, let's remove it. We don't agree, let's remove it.
And that's what I was trying to do with my feedback on that document, is really pare it down to its essence on the stuff that is really not controversial.
So,
and then we can.
I commit to, I will take Brian's document and I'll put it in a Google Doc, and I will get the people who are most concerned about that, you, Joe, you, Brendan, probably, and Brian, and we'll all 4 of us sit down and we'll go through and we'll strike every line, and then what's left, in theory, has enough weight to say we're safe. Is that fair?
So, Brandon, I think you want to talk right here.
Specifically to codify what we're doing today, right? Which means the bulk of that document is actually going to be stricken, because like 30, 40, 50% of the doc is the contributor ladder,
Actually, most of the contributor ladder exists today. What doesn't exist is process for actually adding anybody to any level
Yeah,
of the
we've
ladder.
never assigned names. We've never formalized the ladder. As we were iterated on this ladder idea, we specifically broke up things that exist today into multiple steps to make it more progressible.
So I feel like if we can get 4 of us to agree on that, then we're in a reasonable state for saying what's left is capturable and useful, and then we can move on. So Tim, you're the lone wolf on this one. Basically, we'll come back to a document that captures enough of the current state that we satisfy that and move on.
And I think that's fine, but my concern about that PR in general is that I felt like it was more role than process. And I think that the process is actually the more important bit. But I mean, the rules are necessary.
I agree. Process is our problem today. Clarifying the rules and then leaving the hook points, which says this process must be defined, is a good way to say, here's all the processes that Tim has to go then put in his document.
So I agree that process is important. I'll just point out that most people seem to want to discuss organization. So like if you look at all the proposals, they're mostly centered around how to structure the project rather than process. So I definitely agree that we also need to pay attention to the process, but I don't view them as in conflict necessarily. We have to work on both.
No, I agree entirely, but I think that I think that we have a limited amount of energy to devote to this, and I think that the energy that is devoted to process is better spent than energy devoted to roles, I guess. Or maybe another way to say that is, once we define a process, then the roles that are necessary to implement that process become obvious.
I don't know. I find that
I think that adding process is good, but we also need to add visibility, because I think a lot of people, and as reflected in the survey, was people don't actually see what's happening. So if people see what's happening, they're going to take more of an interest in it because they actually have the capability to interact with it. So it's partly process, but it's also visibility. So writing a bunch of rules doesn't help if there's no oversight or accountability.
Right. Just so I understand, we need somebody to take a retrospective of what's happening today. Clayton volunteered to do that, and then have Tim be like the owner overall. And that's just like one tick in Tim's to-do list, right? So we're discussing.
Yes, I think that's accurate.
One suggestion for Tim, Clayton said in Tim's document, I would really love to see us break this up into smaller chunks that we can agree on and make sort of small victories and build on that versus trying to do a big bang, let's consider the world type.
So I'm completely in agreement with that philosophically. From a getting code or docs reviewed point of view, having 5 docs or 10 docs is 100 times less reviewable than having a single doc. So I would propose procedurally that we have a single doc that is broken up into sections, which logically are independent docs, that allows us to move information and ideas between sections without having to open up different files, different diffs, and be able to make those comparisons.
Okay, I think that's great, but let's vote them in independently. How's that?
That's fine.
I think we need small victories.
Yeah. makes
This is Jordan. Also from just a perspective of documenting what the process currently is, whether we like it or not or agree with it or not, I think it's helpful to capture just from going back to the survey and saying people want to know how things are being done, even if it's not something we're happy with. And so documenting what's there and putting it in a section that says, this is what's currently happening and we're not happy with everything and this shouldn't be taken as this is the process we must follow. But if you're wondering, here's how things are currently happening. And then as we improve that, we can take stuff out of that and put it in this is how things must be done.
Yes, thank you.
And to Joe and Brendan's point about putting too much weight on the way we do things already, I think that there's just the tension between if we can't capture what we're doing now and then have a process in place that moves us from that, we're going to fail anyway, right? So if we can strip down what we're doing now to the non-contentious things, that gives us a C kernel that addresses Jordan's issue, but then moves in the future direction. I
think that it's impossible for us to write down what we do now without idealizing it. And Sarah, I'm going to apologize for what I'm about to say here because it's somewhat inflammatory. I think that the way that our current process works is that people argue until exhaustion, until somebody gives up. A lot of stuff happens in SIGs and it gets checked in without wider review. And then we all deal with it at release time.
And yet Kubernetes is still succeeding. And people are still.
I want to call attention to the fact that when Brendan presented that chart, those were people who responded to Kubernetes survey, right? There's a built-in sampling bias there when you're asking the wider community. We're asking the people that are already Kubernetes users, not the folks that actually said, I don't get it. So we could be succeeding 10x's more. And I'm going to be giving a talk about that at KubeCon.
And exactly, that's
I entirely agree with Joe's comments. They're spot on, whether they're inflammatory or not. I think they're spot on. And the current process is so ad hoc and so based on personal relationships and knowing whether to ask mom or to ask dad for permission to have ice cream for tonight, that I really believe that trying to document all that is just going to be an exercise in frustration.
So can I make a suggestion that instead of trying to document the process, that we focus on the risks that we all agree upon in the current process? So, I mean, as a co-owner of SIG cluster ops, a huge risk I see is the fact that there's no cross-cutting ops visibility across the project. Lots of things, opsy things happen in ops-oriented SIGs, and we don't have any visibility. That's a huge problem. We don't have enough input from the operator community for the same reason. So there are risks inherent in the way we're doing things right now that I see. Yes, we're successful, but we all have this sense in our guts that we're on the precipice of a time where we may not be as successful because we're going to pass a point where we can't actually manage these cross-cutting concerns in a really good way.
I would agree, and I would say to Clayton's point about us being successful, like we're successful based on the community we had a year ago, not based on, like, our success of next year is defined by the community we have now. And I think there is risk.
So
maybe part of it is like having a nicer version of what Joe said. Like, as we're documenting what currently happens, at this point, the process is poorly defined, and this is the sort of thing that happens, and this is what we need to improve. But just so someone can look and see, how do we get from A to B? And today we do it in a poorly defined way, but just so someone can see, oh, at this point, it's not well defined, and they know it's not well defined, and they're working on it.
No, that's awesome. I mean, in some ways, it's the equivalent of Kelsey's like Kubernetes the hard way, right?
And again, like, I didn't want to bring it up as a content, like as a disagreement. I'm merely trying to say, like, that is how every person who contributes to the product today must contribute. And so as a result, like, I want to at least have something that anchors that in the reality of what we're doing, call out all the flaws, call out all the gaps, call out the ugly things, and make that be an input, not the only input to the next stage.
Does anybody disagree with that as an approach for the first cut at getting the current state in place?
Well, so I think actually with the exclusion of the proposed rules in Brian's doc, he has done a very good job capturing the current state of the project. Like, I can't imagine, a large number of lines that need to be stricken from that document. The contributor ladder is, although it's not automated, and I agree that there is no process for how you become any of those roles, which has been rather frustrating as a person who is not, an employee of Google, Red Hat, or Microsoft. But the document itself is pretty good. And I think that, to Brendan's point, that there are, only a couple actual formal structures we have, or informal structures that we have. We have the individual contributors, we have the SIGs, and we have our sort of benevolent dictators who are the top level owners files. And a process or an effort to codify their formal structure and also how they relate to each other, not necessarily how to classify every decision, but the process by which decisions are escalated from an individual contributor to, at the worst case, all the way up to the benevolent dictators through the SIGs, because I don't imagine any of us are imagining that decisions would somehow skip review at the SIG and then be aggregated at some higher level, I think is reasonable.
I think there are decisions that skip review at the SIG. And I think that, some of the problem is not necessarily escalation as much as that. That is a problem, but also visibility. Communication and visibility ends up being a critical blocker for a lot of this.
To Bob's point. Yep, sorry,
So communication and visibility, I think, are, traditional project management, program management kind of roles. And we don't have a large number of people who are focused on doing that. We have not, and I think one of the important outcomes of this process would be to define what the PM group is supposed to be doing in order to improve communication and visibility.
No. You can't outsource communication to PMs. It's everybody's job to communicate.
I'm not trying to outsource communication to PMs, but if we have said that, or decided that most SIGs should have a PM representative.
I disagree with that decision.
Hold up. I was going to say, not to interrupt, but like Bob's point about cross-cutting SIG issues is we establish SIGs to treat cross-cutting issues. We have SIGs that are focused on functional areas, and we have SIGs that are focused on use cases and driving features based on those. But what we really don't have is how the classification of decisions. Should SIG ops or SIG PM get to make a decision about something and encourage other SIGs, and how are they in that loop? That is the problem that I think Brendan called out.
Right, and exactly. I think that there's this notion of like, we need to set up the rules, and that's why we need to define, like, if two SIGs both think they own it, well, clearly maybe that's a project level decision. Or if three SIGs don't think that SIG should own, like, I think that there are these places where we need to understand how you break something out of a SIG local decision, even if that SIG doesn't want it to be broken out.
So we're like going through the retrospective slowly and painfully with everyone in the room. Can we just all agree to have Clayton do the retrospective, and then Joe has particular cases where he feels like the current process broke down? That's exactly what a retrospective is for. Say, like, these are 8 cases where Joe has seen that this current structure doesn't work. And then
Joe, can you own the critique part of the retrospective, and I'll own the accumulating part of it?
This is the 1.6 retrospective we're talking about?
I think it's the general one, the broad one.
No, it's the broad current Kubernetes governance processes retrospective, or lack thereof processes.
Is this a new thing, or is this a meeting that's already, or is this
This is a new thing.
Okay. Okay, I'll sign up for the new thing, I guess. I mean, I'm happy to actually go through, like, you know, the governance doc that we have now and just take that as it is and see if we can pare it down to its essence on stuff that we can agree on.
I'm doing that. You own. I'll do that with you.
That's what I want. So what do I do?
You complain and make sure all of the things that you think are fundamentally broken right now get recorded, and then side by side we'll have what it is, what's horribly broken, and then you can go get more stuff and put more horribly broken things in there, and those are both inputs to the process.
Playing the strengths.
So everybody in the group here, if you think that the SIG process or our governance process failed, send some examples to me, and we can hopefully sort of start drawing out some themes from that.
Okay, so we have, I want to time check, we got 14 minutes left.
Yep, 14 minutes. Quickly point out that community issue 402, I tried to collect a list of those things that they called out in the past, so you can, maybe that would be useful as a starting point.
Okay. I would like to get to a concrete set of things that we have agreed as the outcome of this meeting, so that we can communicate it back to the community and so that we can make progress forward. It seems to me that we've agreed that the approvers for any of these processes that we're going to formalize are owners. That's point one. Any objections?
Subset of owners.
Sorry, the subset of owners, correct. Do we want to elect into community representatives as the first action, or do we want to?
No, I think let the owners, like it's really clean. Like, owners is
okay.
Clean.
Anyone else?
Minus.
I would like to get to a point. So I would say maybe I would phrase this as, I think that the owners list, the process that must be defined is how people are added to the owners list or the subsequent owners list. It's for us to exit this process.
Correct.
This is a bootstrap owners list. It is intended to drive to the point where we have a decision-making process and then enforce that decision-making process taking over.
And this is just the bootstrapping group. It's just like, at the end of this, we'll have a much more principled framework for ownership and structure and the rest of it. And path for people who aren't currently on the owners list to become.
Okay. And then the 3 outcomes that we are going to drive for in a time-bounded way are, 1, the retrospectivity thing, roles thing that Clayton is going to do and Joe is going to complain about. 2, the criteria for decisions, effectively the SIG project break, and if we figure there's something else, but right now I think there's just those 2 categories. And then 3, the proposal for how decisions are made both at the SIG level and at the project level going forward, given the input of where we're currently at. So are those 3 outcomes good for people?
Can you repeat the last one?
Basically, how you make decisions. And Ken had the comment that we want to capture what was going well with the SIGs, and so we want to both have the how we currently make decisions in the SIGs that we feel like may be working well, as well as the new, this is how we make project level decisions. that we agreed basically doesn't exist.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to time bounce it. I propose 2 weeks, but I propose starting, let's say starting April 7th or something like that. We won't fall across tax day. And does that work?
Yes.
So starting April 7th?
April 7th.
April 7th is the first day. April 21st would be the close. And we'll have basically, I think we should have a time bound on comments before that. So I don't know, maybe 3 days before the close, the final approvers vote is the time bound on community comments.
We also want to commit maybe to do a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, sorry, but let me connect back to face-to-face. Brendan, on timeline, like we're starting 4/7 and time-bound community contributions. Like there's going to be some ramp-up time to produce any artifact that people can comment on, right?
Can I make a suggestion that we focus on, at the end of the 2 weeks, have a reviewable collateral? So
something about something.
So basically do 2 weeks, 2 weeks until we have the first proposal ready for review by the reviewers, and then add another week or so, maybe 2 weeks to close out reviews and lock it in and confirm it.
Okay, that works. 2 weeks to draft, and then 2 weeks to comment and vote.
Right. That just makes it more realistic. Otherwise, it's going to be
sounds good. Sounds good to me. I just want to make sure we have a hard time bound on the vote.
And then to Ken's point, like this is actually not even great. But I think being in a room is going to be better. What do people think about this?
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Like it's the kind of thing the participants are going to need to close themselves off and actually just grind through this. And ideally, as many of the owners, having as many of the owners present as possible to kind of immediately cycle and get feedback would be great. So I would strongly recommend like picking a week somewhere like Mountain View or San Francisco and just get people in the room and grind through it.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't take a week. And Clayton's the one I want to give voice to because he's the one, like it's easy for us to fly up and down the coast. Across country is not as fun.
Yeah, I'm on vacation the week after KubeCon. That's my only limit. I can do others.
I think we should focus on like a, shortish trip, 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, I think 3 days is an upper bound. If we're shooting for the week between 4/7 and 4/21, the 2 weeks there, I want to front load it.
And we have DockerCon coming up in there too, I guess. So.
We have DockerCon in the middle, and we have taxes in the middle. And I don't know about you guys, but I haven't started mine. So
yeah, and I actually have vacation from the 10th to the 17th. So.
Spring break. There's spring break in Seattle on starting on the 10th.
Here too. The week after, on the week of what's the next week? 17th.
17.
Are we all going to be at DockerCon? Can we just front load this with DockerCon, or is everybody busy?
Oh, let's get it done before then, man.
I haven't written my DockerCon talk yet either, so.
All right.
So where are we now with times? It sounds like the 2 weeks that we just picked are probably the worst that we could have possibly chosen.
Except for all the rest. No week between here and November is going to look nice for everybody.
Let's start this week for 17. And organize the meetings on the week before 17. We can do pre-work that week of the 10th.
So we're going to start the work a month from now?
No, let's get the meeting scheduled for the week of 4/17. And we'll close it out in the last 3 days, and then we'll hand it off to the owners on the.
That is dead on top of DockerCon.
I think it should be the week before that.
All right.
We don't have DockerCon on my schedule.
On vacation.
I can't do that.
That's spring break. Damn it.
Just fun time.
Do we really, honestly, I'm not sure. Do we really believe that face-to-face is this critical? I'm actually not sure that face-to-face is this critical.
Yes.
I think it's actually counterproductive to set it up with that preset because we need to accommodate people who are in Europe or in India or China or wherever.
Well, to be clear, this is going to be the approvers. This is not going to be like everybody. This is 5 people.
I think we fundamentally need to bootstrap because I've got a bunch of notes here, but I don't think that they're sufficient.
We need people together. Even if they can't show up, let's just find some time that works. I've never seen this work but for getting people together, closing them in, forming a base of opinion, actually get it done.
Yes. So something has to give.
Just pick a date and we'll make it work. I don't know who the approver on the day. I mean, Tim, you own this.
I own it, I guess. People, please send me today your vacation or unavailability plans between now and the end of April. And I will pick 2 or 3 days that I can fit in there that accommodate the most number of people, and I will try to figure it the heck out.
Okay, so what were the dates that you wanted between now and?
Now and the end of April.
Okay.
And anything you don't put on this list is fair game, and if you later object, I don't care.
I have to coordinate with wife, so.
Just to confirm, there was talk of amending or lessening the membership on the approvals. Is that going to happen before this meeting, or are the people that are in the list currently?
Yeah, no, we'll send that out today.
Okay, great.
Wait, sorry, the proposal was to change owners or just?
No, not to change owners, just to say that the approvers are the people we discussed, which is owners minus Wojtek, Don, and Tim. Or sorry, not Tim, Daniel.
It's the 5 people that we identified as the owners, or sorry, as the approvers. This is our constitutional committee.
And bootstrap approval. Make it very clear that it's bootstrap approval, not their.
This is the constitutional committee.
Yes.
This is
Committee to unelect the president. I mean, what? I didn't say that out loud.
This is a one decision group. When we're done with this, we disband. If it turns out that this group reforms under the new constitution, that's fine.
Yes.
Yes. That's
Yes.
Great. We've got about 4 minutes left. Is there anything that that we have not covered?
I would just request that when that group got their meeting scheduled, that they would give us a heads up. I think it would be worth it for us to have some forum to give some feedback, that group, prior to their meeting.
I think that's fair, and I would also propose that perhaps if we're going to be doing a 3-day group, that we have a summary at the end of each day that is publicly open.
Yes.
So like one of these at the end of each day.
Yeah, we could do like a 1-hour call at the end of every day, or a half-hour call at the end of every day.
Yes. Or at the beginning of the next, or something like that.
Who is taking care of the communications for the subtractions from the owners?
I can do it if you want. I'll just send a summary to KubeAnnounce.
So part of what I'm going to do, I guess since I'm owning something, I'm going to create a new doc that is the running decisions here, that includes the approvers list, that is the ongoing, I don't know, established decisions or something like this, the draft.
Yeah, I think it's up to you to sort of like, really have final say in crafting the ballot to some degree, Tim.
Yeah, I'll think about how to expose it more. For now, capturing notes from this call is great. I'll try.
Feel free to lean on us, but at the end of the day, we're all going to disagree, and so we're just going to have to be flexible.
I know.
Yeah, and we also have the Kubernetes governance group that we can use for sharing.
For mailing lists, yes. Okay. All right. Any objections to Google Docs, just as a faster way to iterate, then get them.
Please go for it.
All right. All right.
Okay. Wow. This is amazing. Let's more of this.
All right.
Thank you also, everybody, for staying really positive. This is not easy stuff to do.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.